COVID, and then going off social media for a while. When I got COVID and turned off all my devices, which means I wasn't really on social media, really? That much or anything like that. And then she says, I found that when I went to open Twitter up again, it just like wasn't making me feel. So, I mean, literally, I would go to open the app and almost felt like anxious. People kind of fight and gossip and all sorts of stuff so much. Wow. The leader of the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
Speechless,
it is actually amazing. Again, I keep repeating that word over and over again on this podcast, but it's just so bizarre, everything that's going on. I'm finding myself at a loss for words. Now, I mean, what the article is referring to is Salkat Chakrabarti, and I may be pronouncing that wrong, and I apologize if I am.
I didn't even attempt it.
But basically, before AOC was known, he actually cast who would make the perfect liberal progressive congressperson. He found AOC, put her in the role, ran her campaigns. He became her chief of staff, ran what she was doing in Washington. He has now left, and she is now floundering. One, because she has not gotten a single piece of legislation out of committee. And two, it's become very obvious that her only real strength is Twitter. And now she's backing away from Twitter, which will kill any attempt that she's going to make to primary Chuck Schumer. It's going to take her out of the public eye because, let's face it, the only reason people keep reporting on her is because of her constant tweets. She backs away from that. She has no legislative power. She is done.
I think also if she goes up against Schumer, that's in the hot lights. And she's going to have to actually answer questions, think on her feet, talk about policy. Good luck with that one. And that was quite a transcript, wasn't it, Dr. Lopkin? That's like maybe a fifth grader or like a Valley Girl from the 80s. It was like, yeah, man, I don't know. I'm not digging this. People are like really upset and stuff.
Quite frankly, I don't think it sounded all that different from Kamala Harris.
Well, there you go. Good analogy. I like that. Yeah, very good. So then we have a couple things about Manchin. Build Back Better is dead. He basically I would think, the final stake in that. And then we also have our esteemed media wizard, Mr. Zucker at CNN, was forced to retire because of an affair, resign because of an affair and other situations at CNN. Before we get even to the ramifications and why and if and how it happened, I like to meet this woman personally because I didn't think any human was capable of having sex with this person. But there's someone for everyone, I guess. Your thoughts on the whole matter?
Yeah. Well, first of all, he wasn't forced to resign because of the affair. He was forced to resign because he was in a relationship with this woman, and Warner Media HR requires their employees to report if they are in a relationship with a coworker. And Jeff Zucker did not report this. Okay, now why does that make it a little different? Because that is an incredibly minor offense. This was not somebody who was claiming that Zucker attacked her. This was a completely consensual affair. So why is he being forced to resign? Honestly, I believe if CNN had its ratings not fall through the basement, they
600 and something thousand, yes.
Yeah, they would not have used this as an excuse to get rid of him. I think it's
100%.
all about the fact that he has been a complete failure destroying the network. But I think it's also a sign of a larger media turnaround, because now you have CNN getting rid of Jeff Zucker. They've already gotten rid of Chris Cuomo. I'm going to guess, given Don Lemon's legal problems, that the only thing that's keeping him on board is that he's African American. But even more important, and almost unnoticed by most people in the media, was the announcement that over at MSNBC, Rachel Maddow is stepping away from her show.
The only one that gets ratings on that network.
Yes. So you actually have this massive collapse of these people who have been covering for the liberals. Now,
also, speaking of media, though, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, the one thing that I wasn't aware of until all of this hit is that, we've talked about it on the podcast before, that Warner Media is merging with Discovery Networks. I did not realize that merger had not gone through yet. So I think that's also a big part of this, because
cleaning house before
the merger, because again, John Malone, who's a major owner in Discovery Networks, has previously stated in a public interview that CNN has no reporters. So I think they're going to start cleaning house, and they're reshaping that network prior to the merger.
I would agree, but I have a question to ask you. Are you or are you not a little baffled? I'm kind of frankly amazed. Mr. Zucker, you could have Keith Richards running CNN would do it better. That is, forget about they're liberal, the bias, to the left. The network is Anderson Cooper, Don Lemon. It's unwatchable. I remember 25 years ago, I used to watch CNN all the time. It was actually pretty good. He destroyed it. I mean, zero talent. I'm sorry. I know he got lucky in, the Today Show and all that, but wow. You ran CNN into the ground. What he did to CNN, he lost it became a political hack network, and people turned them off. It will take a huge effort to get their brand identity back.
Well, again, it's not just CNN. Remember, this has been the trend throughout Zucker's entire career. He was phenomenal as producer of the Today Show. They won their time slot. I think it was for like 7 years straight. So they promoted Zucker to take over primetime. And under him, primetime floundered. Then they promoted him to take over the whole network. And when he was in charge of NBC routinely came in 5th in the broadcast ratings. Because they were not only beaten by ABC, CBS, and Fox, they were being beaten on a regular basis by Telemundo and sometimes Univision.
Beautiful. Well, I'm sure you're going to be sad to see him go, aren't you, Dr. Lopkin?
Oh, yeah. His was a ridiculous career of abject failure rising to the top. I'm actually hoping between the Discovery merger and getting rid of Zucker and Cuomo, hopefully they will clean house. And I actually do have high hopes that CNN will become a news network again, like they were in the days of the Iraqi war, reporting live from Baghdad.
And you used to have shows like Crossfire, Larry King. It was very entertaining, very good. I think, again, I've talked about it before. I'm just really thinking one of the most everyone knows Don Lemon's like brain dead, but Anderson Cooper, he looks the part, but woof, what an empty suit. But speaking of communications, we were talking previously about the squad spending over $325,000 on security. But yeah, Jen Psaki also laughing at the crime, the increase, the explosion of the crime epidemic in one of her press conferences. That's also insightful, I believe, Dr. Lopkin.
It wasn't on a press conference. She was being interviewed.
Oh no, it was right. It was a Skype thing. Yes, I remember that.
And she was actually ridiculing Fox News for talking about how bad crime has gotten and how it's affecting the American public. Now poll after poll after poll, Americans have ranked crime either number one or number two in what they are concerned about right now. Psaki laughed this off and in the press conference defended the Biden administration by saying that they had, put money for police in the COVID stimulus bill, which all the Republicans voted against. So it's the Republicans' fault. They were the ones that voted to defund the police. She's been repeating this for almost a year now. The Washington Post gave her 3 Pinocchios, saying this was a lie because the COVID bill did not have money for police. It had money for local municipalities to, quote, fill holes in their budget. Could they use it for police if they wanted? Sure. But that's not what it was earmarked for. And Biden has repeatedly said he is not going to stand up to the progressive DAs that have been refusing to prosecute criminals. So, yes, the Biden administration has been very soft on crime, and Psaki was just laughing it off. She thinks it's funny. Well, I don't know. This was the first time I ever saw her laugh like that. Maybe she's been around Harris too long.
Yeah, maybe it is contagious. You never know. But last thing to finish up about the media, I think I find it kind of interesting. You even had the New York Times suing to get information on Hunter. It's about what we talked about just a segment ago. Do you find it interesting that maybe, number one, are they turning on Biden because they know that he represents basically the destruction, the short-term destruction at least, of the Democratic Party? I think that's true. I mean, if they're actually doing reporting that they didn't do during the election on Hunter Biden, that's going to be explosive.
Yeah, the media has turned on Biden because with these poll numbers and his creation of crisis after crisis after crisis, I mean, let's face it, the border crisis was his creation. Inflation is in large part due to his policies. Afghanistan was completely his fault. Every time he gets involved with something, it gets worse and worse. Well, the media has their own businesses and their own reputations to think of. There's only so far they can cover for him. And now all of the stories that they were saying, oh, it's fake news, it's not real, it's Russian disinformation, the Hunter Biden laptop, the Wuhan lab leak. Now they're all being shown up because these things have legs. There's actual facts behind them that they refused to investigate. So now they're in survival mode. They're basically going, all right, Biden's dead in the water. We can't protect him. We've got to try to resurrect our own reputations. And the only way to do that is to now investigate everything that they were saying was tinfoil hat conspiracies.
I would agree with you about their reputations 100%. Not because they want to do good, it's because their entire livelihoods depend on it. I mean, New York Times, they're obviously a huge entity, but they're struggling. Trump kind of kept them afloat. They've lost credit, the Russia hoax. They used to be the, everything that's fit to print. Well, they've lost that, just like CNN. But I think on a bigger note, and we'll finish with this, and I want your opinion, I'm sure our listeners do as well, is that I wonder if some of this is really, they want to reestablish their reputations, but then they also want him removed because they know if they don't have him removed or get him removed, or at least help in that process, the Democratic Party is finished. And there's another thing, just real quick, is I laughed at the fact that his last disastrous press conference, they said, well, he's going to get out there more. Then he went to Pennsylvania, basically was incorrect, saying it's the city with the most bridges in the world. No, it's not. And then just, again, everywhere he goes, he just looked incompetent and inept. So a little bit there, but close on that, Dr. Locke.
Yeah, the more he gets out there, the the worse he looks. I mean, I think his campaign folks